Hi. So I noticed something has been cropping up on my news feed. And let me just be clear, the issue itself I don't think is newsworthy. I don't think it is even worth making a video about. So my video shouldn't be interpreted as hypocritical, i.e., I'm saying it shouldn't get attention, but I'm drawing attention to it. No, I'm drawing attention to the wider issue of how the media so often, and I'm using media in a generic sense, um, just trivialize, just draw attention to small things, and they get snowballed into something bigger. So the issue is that during Prime Minister's questions, Dominic Raab and Angela Rayner were facing off. Johnson, of course, is at the NATO summit. And Raab apparently winked at Rayner at the end after accusing her of championing socialism because, as he put it, she wasn't on the picket line, she was at an opera with champagne. She's retorted to this saying she was indeed at the opera, a working class friend of hers had invited her, right? And that's about it. Apparently, at the end, he made some winking gesture. You sort of see that in the clip, but that's it. That is it. That's it. But according to some news sites, Twitter was outraged by this blatant display of sexism by Dominic Raab. Spare me, really. Um, I just think that it's unfortunate when such small things are blown out of proportion. Here's the thing: politics is adversarial by nature, right? So if you have two very different politicians from different parties, different backgrounds, squaring off, going to be adversarial. That's understandable. And actually, politics should be adversarial in a democracy, in the sense that we should clearly know the differences. Now, was it unprofessional of Rab? Maybe a bit unprofessional. But Angela Rayner doesn't exactly have a monopoly on diplomatic language either, as is well known. And I would say some of the things she's come out with is worse. As for Rab's line about champagne socialism, I think it's a bit of a cheap shot. I mean, just because someone um, enjoys culture doesn't mean they can't have concern for employees' rights. I think that's a bit of a cheap shot by Rab. But I just think this is trivial. And it annoys me that it's blown out of proportion because pretty much everyone network is covering this like it is a legitimate story. It's nothing. And what I find galling is, had this been a man that Rab was facing off and he winked at the man, no one would be saying anything. Um, I mean, there's often testy exchanges between men in Parliament, certainly between Johnson and Starmer, but there's plenty of examples of men being rude to each other in Parliament. Now, maybe the wider issue is about generic respect, but I'm honestly tired of this mantra of sexism in Parliament. Um, Spare me. Why is it okay for women to say things to their male counterparts that aren't exactly flattering, but as soon as a man does it, then it's sexism? The double standards are pathetic. And I do have a theory about this. I think ever since Dominic Raab in an interview said that he didn't see himself as a feminist, I think the Labour left, and that is left wing Labour women especially, they've been out to get him. They want to show what a sexist dinosaur he is. Now, Rab's a Tory. I'm not. I certainly wouldn't agree with all of his positions. His handling on Afghanistan was certainly far from impressive, but I just think it's trivial, and I think there are serious issues at hand. If anything, the point about champion socialism might be more debate worthy, but I just think sexism is one of those terms that could throw it around. All a man has to do is disagree with a woman, and he's patronising her. I'm sick of that sort of narrative. The other thing that I have a problem with is that sometimes it will literally take one or two people saying something cynical on social media, and then certain networks will lap it up and they'll say Twitter was outraged. I'll give an example of this. The other day at Glastonbury, during Paul McCartney's piece, he showed a segment of Johnny Depp. Now, one person, or maybe a couple of people, had said, "Oh, is it appropriate for Depp to be featured here?" for those of us who don't agree with the outcome. So a few people comment, and then somehow certain networks see it as legitimate to make that social media was outraged. No, some people on social media were outraged. It's a distortion, and it's clickbait, and I think it's very cynical. I want news networks to focus on serious issues. That's what they should be doing, not manufactured outrages. Um, because all it does is distract. I think it furthers divisions, it distracts, and it just isn't news. It really, really isn't. Now, if you had, let's say, 10,000 people launching a petition against any appearance of Johnny Depp, that might be a bit more newsworthy. But a few people complaining on Twitter, it's ridiculous. It really is. And as you could probably tell by my voice, it's irritating because I think it dumbs down journalism. I think it dumbs down these issues. Um, if people think that Dominic Raab's wink was patronising, they're entitled to that opinion, but I just don't think it's newsworthy. And I don't think his team should be having to explain it any more than Angela Rayner's team should have to explain things. Although I would say that calling her opponent scum is a bit more inflammatory than a wink. And she did apologise, to be fair. But so much of politics is trivialised by the media. Now, politicians themselves sometimes are not as professional as they should be. It can feel like, the people running the country, people elected to parliament, behave like kids. And that's, it's unprofessional. They should be aware that the public is watching it. But it's, you know, I just think it's trivial. So that's the issue I want to draw attention to, not so much the Raab Rayner incident, but the wider issue of how media dumbs down, because it does, and it it just turns trivial small things into much bigger issues than they really should be.